visited the CT scan department, radiology, JPMC, and have seen the CT scanner. It looks like that. It is the couch on which the patient lies while having a CT scan done, and this is the gantry and there are many CT scanner within it, like X-ray tubes. There are many X-ray tubes within it, and the patient it rotates, and the patient 3D scan is done. This is the open CT scanner. This is the CT scan room layout, and this is the CT scan machine basically, and there is a lead wall, lead glass, so that the radiation wouldn't come out, and this is the place where the technician sits, and he put all the commands and all the data in the computer and operate the machine from outside this room, so that he or she will not receive any radiation. Now next, this is the basic planning. As you all know, CT scan is a 3D view, like it is a cross-sectional study. So we have three planes: axial, coronal and sagittal. If you cut the patient from front to behind, anterior to posterior, from top to bottom, anywhere, like in our setup, we have dealt with the CT scan brain. So in the brain region, from top to bottom, so the axial plane will go from top to bottom in this way, from anterior to posterior. In the coronal, from front to behind in this plane, like this cut, this cut, this cut, this cut. And in the sagittal, in the sideway plan, like it is the side line, and it will like this. Understanding of these planes is vital to understand the CT scan, because many of the persons, many of the even consultants, read the CT scan as frontal, parietal, temporal and the occipital lobe in a single image. It is not possible, because if the cut is from this place, how the occipital lobe can come in this region? And if the cut is from this place, only the frontal and occipital will come. How the parietal will come? So this is the understanding of the planes, and it is very vital. This is the CT scan brain axial image, and it is taken at the level of the lateral ventricles. The outside is the bone, because basically we dealt with three types of densities. We use the terminology density or Hounsfield units in the CT scan, because it can be isodense. Isodense means just like the normal brain parenchyma, hypodense like CSF, or some infarction or some edema. I will dealt with it in the further lecture. And the hyperdense, which is like bone, more whiter, hyperdense, less whiter, more blacker than hypodense, and same as the brain parenchyma is isodense. In this case, I have put a yellow arrow, and it means that there is some pathology here. So there is an ill-defined hypodense area in the right periventricular location, and it is an ischemic infarction in the region of right middle cerebral artery. You can see the dense MCA sign here also. You can see this thing. The middle cerebral artery has got 3-4 type of branches, like M1, M2, M3 pattern. So this is the most distal pattern near the cortex, and this is blocked by the hyperdense thrombus and resulting in the ischemic infarction in the parietal region basically. So this is the case of ischemic infarction in the right middle cerebral artery. Another image of the infarction that was of the fresh patient, and this is a 1-day old patient. Infarct is 1 day old. So you can see very well demarcated hypodense area. This is the normal brain parenchyma which is isodense. This is the hyperdense bone, and this is the hypodense infarction. It is infarction, ischemia in the region of the left middle cerebral artery in frontoparietal region. You can see the dense MCA sign here also, this thing. Then again another image, you can see in the right frontoparieto-temporal region a large middle cerebral artery infarction, and the dense MCA sign is in the next image. Then the ventricles are gone. Another image, but here what is can be seen? We can see the fox. What is fox? Fox cerebri. There are basically the two lobes of the cerebral hemisphere, two cerebral hemispheres, which are united by the fox cerebri. So we can see a hypodense area, well-defined hypodense area in the right side of the fox or in parasagittal location. This is another ischemic infarction. This is ischemic infarction in the right anterior cerebral artery territory. Anatomy will tell you the region of the blood supply, and this is the anterior cerebral artery territory. So this is the infarction of the anterior cerebral artery. Actually history also tells you many things. Patient is an old person and he had sudden loss of consciousness. Another thing, ischemic infarction can be small. Left side blue arrow, you can see a small hypodense area in the left frontal lobe, and this is the ischemic infarction. Then it can be along the back of the brain, like in the occipital region, occipital lobes. These are the frontal horns of the lateral ventricle. This is the third ventricle, and these are the occipital horns of the lateral ventricle. In the occipital horns, we see the choroid plexus calcification normally. You can see this. This is the normal calcification of choroid plexus, and you can see the normal calcification of the pineal gland here in the midline in third ventricle. This is the third ventricle. So this is the ill-defined hypodense area in the left occipital region, and this is the ischemic infarction of left posterior cerebral artery or left PCA territory. Again ischemic infarction of right posterior cerebral artery, but there are few other infarcts, like this is the infarct in the thalami adjacent to the third ventricle and in the right cerebral hemisphere also, cerebellar hemisphere also. Again few ischemic infarction in the basal ganglia region, ischemic infarction in the thalamus, ischemic infarction in the caudate lobe of the basal ganglia. Basal ganglia has three parts: caudate, putamen and lentiform. So these are the few infarcts, because if the microvessels are obstructed, you can have these microinfarcts, sometimes symptomatic and sometimes asymptomatic. Then sometimes you see the symmetrical things, hyperdensities in bilateral basal ganglia but are symmetrical. Both sides are same. This is the normal brain and this is the abnormal. You can see the basal ganglia calcification. These are the benign findings, and the basal ganglia calcification, which can be benign but can be an indicator of some pathology like chronic liver disease, like pseudohypoparathyroidism, like oxygen intoxicity or some drug poisoning. So the consultant will evaluate further what type of pathology he or she might have. Now the bleed. Blood usually comes hyperdense. Hyperdense means more than the brain parenchyma, more dense than the brain parenchyma. So this is the biconvex. You can see biconvex. This is the axial image, this is the coronal image. Biconvex pattern of hyperdensity, and this is the epidural or extradural hematoma. This is the epidural or extradural hematoma. It might cause some brain edema, and it might result in midline shift, this thing, and the patient might have lucid interval in this case. And if it is large enough and causing compression over the adjacent brain parenchyma and causing herniation of the brain tissue, so we can have burr hole here and can evacuate this by the neurosurgeon. And if this is not done, then the herniation will continue and patient will die. So this is very important. He will put a probe and he will suck out this blood and put some swab and compress it basically, and the bleeder stops. So this is a life-saving procedure, and the lucid interval is here. Okay, patient has got RTA in the and found unconscious on the road, and brought to the hospital by some unknown persons, and suddenly he wake up and say, okay, I am fine, now I am going home, and then at home he suddenly dies. So this might be because of the epidural or extradural hematoma causing compression over the brain parenchyma, vital organs of the brain like brain stem, and brain herniation. Then another epidural or extradural, both are the same. This is the bleed, hyperdense, biconvex. Then another type of bleed we can have is subdural. You can see this thing adjacent to the bone, parietal bone of the skull. It is lentiform, just like a moon. One side is convex and one side is concave, and you can see there is so much edema. The ventricle is pushed like this. You can see this side ventricle and you can see the other side of the ventricle. Both are so asymmetrically this one is pushed and this is so much compressed. So this is the, I colored it green and yellow, and you can see the subdural hematoma easily. It is comparatively more lethal and cause brain herniation and the edema more easily. Again another patient, you can see subdural hematoma and compression over the adjacent brain stem. Then intraparenchymal hemorrhage, multiple hemorrhages in the brain parenchyma, basically in the frontal and temporal lobe. This thing, intraparenchymal bleed, you can see a thin rim of hypodensity around it. And why this occurs? This is basically the edema due to the irritant hemoglobin which lies inside the brain. You can see this, you can see this, you can see this, all have a surrounding hypodense rim. So this is edema, this is the irritation. Brain doesn't like blood within it. Blood is meant for the capillaries or blood vessels, not outside the vessels. So brain is irritating. But in this scan you can see another thing. There is a large subcutaneous hyperdensity, You can see the soft tissue here, it is small and lean and thin, but on this side it is so much bulky and thickened and hyperdense, you can see. So this is the subcutaneous hematoma. Patient had impact on this side, impact of the floor or impact of the some a hard object, anything on this side, but the contusions or intraparenchymal hemorrhage on this side. This is the counter coup injury, impact on one side and the hemorrhage on the other side. So this is the counter coup injury. Then you can see the hyperdensities in the basal cisterns and in the adjacent cortical sulci. This is a case of subarachnoid hemorrhage. Subarachnoid hemorrhage, you can see. This is subarachnoid hemorrhage. Usually the subarachnoid hemorrhage, it is more clear. It is in the sylvian fissure, in the cortical sulci. You can see this, and in the basal cisterns along the this thing, quadrigeminal, ambient, and all that, the suprasellar, suprachiasmatic, all cisterns are involved, showing hyperdensity. Blood is always hyperdense, but when it resorbs, it may get further hypodensity and ultimately resolve with the gliosis. So this is the hyperdensity and this is the subarachnoid hemorrhage. Usually occurs due to the rupture of some aneurysm. So patient has to be evaluated by angiography, CT angio. So the aneurysm is detected and it can be ligated by the neurosurgeon, but the 6 weeks are usually given due to the, some says either it should be done within the 24-hour, the surgery should be done in the 24-hour, otherwise the vessels go in spasm, vasospasm, and ultimately the surgery should be delayed in that case up to the 6 weeks period. Every consultant has different patterns of treatment, but where the blood goes once it came into the brain parenchyma or anywhere in the brain, what are the drainage channels? Ultimately they are again the ventricles, so it will go into the ventricles, like this is the frontal horn, this is the third ventricle, and these are the dependent occipital horns of the lateral ventricles. Blood goes into it and ultimately causes, and this is the fourth ventricle, you can see the fourth ventricle aqueduct, and this is the fourth ventricle. So the blood goes into the ventricles, but the choroid plexus is not meant for the blood to come, the blood particles to come into it. So it is meant for the basically CSF production and absorption. So it will clog, like in our washrooms, the our bathtub, or sometime our wash basin clog due to some particles or some hairs. So ultimately what we get the pooling of the water into it. Same like this, the pooling of the water is going on. What is pooling of water? Means the CSF pressure is rising and there is more and more CSF accumulating. It will cause what it is called hydrocephalus. So the complication is occurring. The patient had intraparenchymal bleed one day, and within 3-4 days it will go into the ventricles, and then ultimately the ventricles get obstructed by the blood particles, and the patient now gets secondary signs of the hydrocephalus. So at this stage it is important to give him or her mannitol or something, so that this hydrocephalus subsides and ultimately the whole blood is drained and the patient gets well back again. Then CT scan brain is again very important because we have different tools in our with different windows, like bone window. Bone window is very important in defining or delineating a small fracture which is not seen on the simple X-ray, like this. You can see the fracture of the anterior wall of the maxillary sinus or floor of the orbit, and this is the zygomatic arch, and ultimately the ossification of the right maxillary sinus. So orbital blowout fracture is very common in the some all these impairment ladai jhagda period. Then again the superior orbital wall fracture, you can see very easily when you change the window from soft tissue or brain window to bone window. Then sometimes this is the normal brain, but sometimes you can see, you cannot see what is going on. The simple non-radiologist or normal doctor will not be able to appreciate what is going on, but he or she will detect if something is wrong. It is not the normal CT scan, but there are a sort of like ill-defined अजीब सी hypodensities नज़र आ रही है, पता नहीं कैसा लग रहा है brain. These like this is brain edema. Edema always comes hypodense, and it will call this like this, it will cause the brain to swell. Another thing which you see very frequently in the CT scan of the brain is hydrocephalus. As I have already mentioned, the dilatation of the ventricles is the hydrocephalus. You can see the lateral ventricle is so much dilated. You can see the frontal horn and the occipital horn. Sometimes all the ventricular system is dilated, like lateral ventricle, third ventricle, and the fourth ventricle. And in this case, it is called communicating hydrocephalus. Communicating hydrocephalus means the pathology is somewhere outside, like in cases of some hemorrhage, intracranial hemorrhage, all the ventricular system will dilate, and sometimes in the cases of infection like in meningitis or encephalitis, all the ventricular system will dilate. So it means that there is some general pathology, like I have told you. But if the lateral ventricle is dilated and the third and the fourth ventricle are not dilated, or lateral and third are dilated and the fourth is normal in size, it means the patient has non-communicating hydrocephalus. And the non-communicating hydrocephalus usually comes due to some stricture, which can be post-infectious, which can be from the childhood, and which can be due to some atretic aqueduct, or it can be due to some tumor. So if the other ventricular system are not dilated, fourth ventricle is not dilated, non-communicating hydrocephalus and some tumor like pathology or stricture is there. Then brain abscess. In this case of infection, we need to have contrast study. In simple CT scan, like infarction or edema, or in cases of bleed, we don't need contrast study. So we give the contrast, intravenous contrast, and in this case you can see the periphery of the lesion enhances. Enhances means it becomes white and the central remains black. You can see in this non-contrast study we cannot appreciate much, but in this case you can see multiple ring enhancing lesions. These are the brain abscesses, and these are, if they are multiple and ring enhancing, sometimes conglomerate, we can see very frequently in tuberculomas, which are very common in our society. Then meningitis. Meningitis, the meninges will enhance. We have the prior history of fever, neck rigidity, altered state of consciousness. So we give the patient contrast, IV contrast, and you can see the meninges are enhancing, and not only enhancing, but they are so nodular and thickened. This is the MRI image. So you can see, appreciate, there is so much nodularity. Normally it is like this. So this is the case of meningitis. Then ventriculitis. Sometimes the patient came with the complaint of hydrocephalus, and it is very urgent, and the sterile conditions are not observed much by the neuroradiologist, neurosurgeon, and they put a shunt into the ventricle, so the obstruction is relieved. The patient got better, and his state GCS is better, but as the sterile conditions are not that much observed, or patient has some infection in the brain like meningitis or encephalitis, so the infection goes to the lining of the brain. This is the ependymal lining, and it got infected, and you can see it is nodular, enhancing, and the patient again develops hydrocephalus. This is the air, and this is due to the introduction of the VP shunt, ventriculoperitoneal shunt. Patient has hydrocephalus. Then brain metastasis. Multiple brain metastasis. Usually they are they can be different in different patients. Like in female, the common thing is breast carcinoma. In male, the prostatic carcinoma or lung carcinoma are the commonest cause. But you can see multiple lesions, usually in the posterior fossa, this thing infratentorial, and usually they are at gray white matter junction. This is the gray matter and white matter junction, and the edema is out of proportion. So you can see the metastasis also in the brain by the CT brain or MR brain. Thank you.